Morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Flexible Data Management of Hybrid Multicloud with IBM and Softcat. Today we have two great speakers, Scott Holmes, our Softcat Senior Hybrid Infrastructure Consultant, and Matthew Fordham, IBM Storage Technical Sales Manager for UK and Ireland. Before we get started, we'd like to remind everyone that you can submit questions at any time during the webinar using the Q&A tool on the console. And all being well, we'll take time to go through these and answer the questions at the end of the session. We'll also want to let you know that there will be a recording for the webinar, which will be emailed to you tomorrow. If you have any questions following this, please speak to your Softcat account manager or our marketing at softcat.com pot if you don't have an account manager. I'll pass you over now to Scott to start the webinar. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you. So, yes, welcome, and thanks again for making time this morning. Really, what we want to be looking at, and my brief introduction for the call this morning, will really just be giving a view on how Softcat, and myself included, see the landscape in terms of data center infrastructure and how applications and data should be hosted and delivered out and add value to the organization. So just as a brief introduction to myself, I'm Scott Holmes. I sit within what's known as the Data Center and Cloud team here at Softcat. It's a team of about 40, 45 or so of us. And our role really is to support the account managers and ultimately their customers in ascertaining the right technological approach to problems or aspirations in the data center space. That includes primary storage, secondary storage, compute, virtualization, automation, orchestration, private cloud, and public cloud, and a few other emerging areas as well. So our job really is to try and understand what customers are trying to do and guide them and steer them in the right direction. So as part of that, obviously, we see an awful lot of situations. We've got 13,000 customers at Softcat. We see lots of different aspirations, lots of different challenges, and lots of different customer situations. So from that vantage point, we're lucky enough to be able to form some opinions about the way the world looks and perhaps some interesting ideas as to where things should be going. So just in terms of a quick housekeeping, you'll notice within the presentation view on the right-hand side, there is a few helpful resources. So these will be available to download and peruse at your own leisure. And they're really some content regarding the IBM sort of value proposition that you'll be hearing about from Matt later on. So just to signpost you towards those. So I'll maybe take 6 or 7 minutes, just give a view as to where we see customers' challenges and how the world is changing. And I guess in summary, the world has changed to such a degree that we're now seen to be drowning in different options and permutations. So 5 years ago, even less maybe, the world was a very simple place. If you had to refresh your infrastructure, you had a couple of options. It was, let's buy some storage, let's buy some servers, let's buy a switch, and maybe the key choice you had to make was, do we use fiber channel or do we use Ethernet and SFP? And that really was kind of the primary technical choice. Now, with regards to where data is residing and how applications access that data, where those applications are run from and how users connect to those applications, there's a myriad of options. And actually, getting our heads around that as IT operations teams and understanding where best to put that has become a real challenge. Obviously, the proliferation of cloud, the reduction in cost of bandwidth, the increase in capability of bandwidth, and the proliferation and advancement of services from all of the public cloud vendors has meant that there's really now a solid business case in most instances to look at how applications may be hosted in those locations. But it's not always right, as we'll touch on in a few moments. IT are typically being asked to do more with less, as the complexity of what we're managing goes up. Typically, our headcount and budgets do not necessarily go up in lockstep. And so therefore, we need to think smarter about how to drive automation, drive sort of operational efficiencies whilst managing all of this complexity and trying to retire some technical debt. We're becoming increasingly distributed. And I think the current situation we're all facing kind of exemplifies that of we're now dealing with people trying to access compute resources, applications, and data from not just tens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of different places if we start including people's homes now. So the variety and diversity of connection mechanisms and compute locations has also magnified. I mentioned technical debt, and I guess another theme we see is that IT are now really not just becoming. When I first got involved in IT nearly 20 years ago, IT was very much a cost center. It was very much, can keep the lights on and fix things if they break, it was always seen as a cost, as a necessary evil. That's obviously changed significantly, which is obviously great for all of us, to the point where IT is now not only in some cases a major differentiator for organisations, but in situations it's the only major differentiator that determines the competitive advantage of an organisation. But in trying to get there, we have to worry with how do we collapse all of this complexity and try and drive real value to the organisation. And last but not least, I've mentioned proliferation a few times, but just this growth of data, the amount that's constantly being added, and legislative impact on what do we keep, how long do we keep it, where do we keep it, what value does that drive to the business, what risk does that data present to the business, and all of these things kind of fold in together to, let's say, a myriad of choices and options about where to put our applications and where to put our data center. And actually, this is almost represents the Softcat data center mission statement, as we exist to try and help understand these different parameters and help chart a course through these waters along with our customers. So when we look at the impact and how these challenges manifest themselves in the decisions that people are making, what I find is quite useful is to look at, and some of you may have seen this, is the 6 R's. It was originally 5. I think Gartner coined it. Amazon made it 6. I think there's a 7th now. Someone mentioned to me the other day, someone trying to sell a book, no doubt, has come up with a 7th or an 8th. But really, they describe the different ways to look at application infrastructure and data and decide where it should be placed and what the operating model underpinning that should look like. And so today we see most businesses still, even those with good solid cloud ambitions, still run most of their infrastructure on premise, and in a relatively traditional way. And by traditional I mean with not a huge degree of automation and orchestration, and each technology stack is kind of managed independently. And very little, and really it's only the new workloads and low-hanging fruit, such as Office 365 and maybe backup as a service or disaster recovery as a service, that have become mainstream for most organizations when looking at the cloud. Where we see that moving is that the majority of applications, the majority of data will ultimately move towards a consumption model. Now, what I don't mean by that is that it will end up in the public cloud. I think it's an important differentiation that cloud is a way of operating IT. It's a way of consuming rather than a place. So what that 70% represents as where we see applications and data, importantly, residing in the future, is not necessarily in AWS, in Google, in Azure, but it's partly that, but where on-premise infrastructure, it's the things that are procured and operated internally, start to take on a lot more of those properties in terms of self-healing, API first, inherently cloud integrated, and highly automated and orchestrated where appropriate. And so that ultimately informs the technology partnerships that we make, is when we're looking at technologies that we should be introducing to our customers, we're very much looking at what technologies are going to enable our customers to move seamlessly and with as little risk and pain and friction as possible into that 70%. And ultimately that's led to our partnership with IBM in this area, and the messaging behind today's briefing is really to look at how their vision really closely aligns with ours and how they're helping customers move into that area, whether that is on-premise, whether that's in the cloud, or increasingly becoming the norm, a little bit of both. So, as I said, that kind of culminates in a mission statement of it's not a really cloud first anymore. It's about cloud appropriate, and it's looking for the best place of execution for both applications and data. So closing words from me really on the wider picture that Softcat see, and again where we see IBM playing into this is if we look at these kind of concentric circles, we place data at the heart of everything we do in terms of architectural appraisals and designs and looking at helping our customers. But the data is the thing that adds value. The applications help extract the value from the data, so they're nearly as important. But then the concentric rings around there just help us frame the technology aspects we need to consider. So starting at 12 o'clock, the fairly simple, boring mechanical aspects of what's the compute layer, what's the storage layer, and what's the network and connectivity layer. But then moving around, we start to increase the level of abstraction in towards where are those hosted? What kind of tools do we use to operate the control plane? How do we monitor? How do we manage? How do we start to build in automation and orchestration? How do we start to provide data assurance? What does backup look like? What does recovery look like? How do we bake high availability in? And making sure that everything is available in any circumstances. And so, again, looking at our technology partnerships, we're always making sure that there is a solid story across all of those aspects and enough variety and flexibility of choice to enable the right choices to be addressing the right applications and the right data. So ultimately, that's what we're here to do. That's hopefully serves a good introduction of how we see the world and the things we're helping our customers wrestle with at present. And as I mentioned previously, it's a beautiful dovetailing into how IBM are addressing those customers' challenges at present. So without further ado, I shall hand over to Matt Fordham from IBM to talk through what they're doing in that space, particularly in the flash system area and its integration into that cloud-like capability that I've mentioned. So Matt, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. Thanks very much for having us here. Thank you, Softcat. It's great to be here and great to have a chance to talk through just our story right now in terms of storage, really mapping onto what Scott's talked about there in terms of the challenges that we're seeing with our customers. The technology, obviously, we're a technology company. We're led by what customers need to do to create innovative solutions to effectively run the business. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the technology first, and then I'm going to talk about how that maps onto the business challenges that very much will sort of speak volumes to what Scott's just talked about there as well. So what I like to do is I really like to tackle something head on, and that is a perception thing. I think there are, for those of you stopping by here, it's probably fair to say that one or two or maybe a few may have this perception of IBM. They're the guys that do mainframe, right? And not really actually thinking about other elements of what IBM does, because maybe we haven't told enough people about what it is that we do, or maybe we don't market ourselves in the same way. But when it comes to storage, the reality is an incredible amount of investment and R&D that goes into storage. I'm talking billions of dollars that we pour into storage R&D alone. And out of that, we really look to drive change when it comes to data and data management. So absolutely, it's fair to say that often when I deal with customers, the perception is quickly turned around when we get a chance to speak. So that's what today's about as well. And really, I'll address the portfolio up front. So the kind of typical slide where I'm talking about a storage portfolio, but there's some real key points I want to hit from this picture that you're looking at right now. Over the last 3 years in storage, we've been on a mission with some incredible investment into creating a radically simplified portfolio in terms of the offerings. We, like any of the storage vendors in the marketplace today, even the newer newcomers to the market, we've all grown in a similar way. And for us in IBM, there were some acquisitions that were part of our growth in terms of storage portfolio offerings. and there was a huge amount of innovation as I talked about. But what we do is we'd have different pockets that would lead to different platforms and different systems. So in the world of open systems, we had a number of offerings, and that was causing confusion. And as I say, we're not alone in that space when it comes to being a storage vendor. Other vendors suffer the same challenges. It's that drive to have innovation that leads to a complex portfolio. So as a few years back, we set about designing the new breed of flash systems. And that breed of flash systems is now a single platform, a single software stack, and therefore you drive up the innovation, but you drive down the complexity and cost for our clients, so that they can choose an entry, mid-range, or high-end enterprise class flash system and get the same commonality of control, management, interface, and you get that the sort of the integration into APIs, and everything is simplified. So these things should be much more simple to manage, simple to control, simple to integrate. It's not today, as Scott talked about, it's such a different world. Today is really about getting on with providing the services, keeping the services highly available, and not having to worry about all of the different technology. So the more we can do to drive that simplification across to our clients, the easier to adopt, the better it is for our clients. Let me just step back one more time to this slide. Sorry. The one thing I just want to touch on very quickly is that we also have storage for mainframe and a huge portfolio within the storage for AI and big data. And again, these are different use cases. So we're talking about unstructured data on the right-hand side, and then open systems, structured data on the left-hand side. Very, very much a simplified portfolio. All driven by a software suite that's available to stack on top. Just a quick touch on the hardware, in a little bit more depth, and that is what really builds into the flash system portfolio. It's Flash Core at the heart of what we do. So Flash Core is what we name our innovations around the flash technology, and this is a presentation with a picture, what appears to be a picture of a disk drive on the page. It's something we used to do years ago, and something you probably haven't seen for a while. But there's a real strong reason for putting this onto this presentation. It's our uniqueness when it comes to flash offerings. It's what we do. It's where some of those billions of dollars of investment really go into. And what we deliver is a drive that looks like any other drive, that conforms to industry standards when it comes to connectivity and plugging into data connections. So currently, NVMe has kind of ruled the world of flash systems. Rightly so. It was something that was needed. And rather than create completely bespoke systems, we've conformed the drive so that our customers have the choice of taking a off-the-shelf NVMe drive, now obviously tested, supported by IBM. But with Flash Core, there's an option. There's an IBM version of that drive, and within that drive, there's such incredible IP. We haven't got time to go through it all today, but effectively, we deliver hardware-based, always-on, inline compression, and that is something that is incredible. We also deliver hardware-based encryption. So we compress data and we encrypt it, make it secure, all at wire speed on the drive with no performance impact. And that's the real sort of key takeaway. So a drive like this can deliver 80 terabytes of storage in a single drive, and we get 24 of these in a 2U enclosure. It's incredible density, incredible capacity. It's unbeatable in terms of performance, and that's just something I really wanted to get across. So huge amount of investment into our own technology that makes our flash hardware different in the first place. Then we combine it with our software, and this is where we add real power and value to what we can design. And it's driven by a hybrid multi-cloud approach, as Scott talked about. Customers are looking to bring back workloads. We're seeing 85% of workloads moving back from public cloud resources to sit or to be placed onto their own private cloud stack. And there's a lot of complexity in that, and everybody's fighting to really make that simplified. And one of the key things is getting the data to work. So bringing the data back from the cloud in the first place, putting it there when it's right to go there, it's not an easy thing to do, and it can be very complicated and clunky. So if you just look at the Spectrum Virtualize software, which is the software that powers our flash system, what it delivers is a set of advanced functionality, storage functionality that you would expect. So this is additional compression, deduplication, we've got tiering, and then further encryption. And the reason we have this kind of other layer that does another advanced set of services, this actually is software that can go onto additional storage that you may already have. So we're talking about here the potential to have software as an advanced layer that can go onto multi-vendor environments, or it could just be sitting within a single flash system product. But we support over 500 different storage controllers now. This is incredible technology that we're striving to keep at the forefront and deliver these advanced services, and that includes out to the cloud. And what you end up with is the ability to start somewhere in a smaller fashion without needing to buy a whole new storage platform, but delivering advanced services that allows you to take your data to the cloud, build simple DR solutions, build recovery points in the cloud, in Amazon, in IBM Cloud, and be able to actually just manage that data in a better, fluid fashion. And then you can bring in performance of flash system as well underneath. So we've just got this flexible approach to being able to really help our clients with a hybrid multi-cloud environment. And that's really where we start to think about, well, what does it mean to you? These are technology points that we've just hit. As I said, warning was there up front that we'll start with a bit of technology, but I want to focus on customer priorities next. When you've got this storage foundation, so Spectrum Virtualize is one element of the Spectrum storage suite, and that suite allows you to do block, file, object management. It's a whole entire suite of data management and operation, and it's available as a software-only approach. So when we talk to our clients as we are today, we're talking about allowing you to think differently about what you can do with that data. You've made some choices in terms of infrastructure. That could be single vendor, it could be multi-vendor. The big difference from IBM is that, yes, we have incredible engineered technology, but we also have this software suite capability, and now includes Red Hat, with Red Hat storage as well in the mix. And that means that you can think about a software-defined storage approach to improving what's in place. Work out where the kinks are, streamline operations, improve application performance, whatever that challenge is that you really need to solve today, it that you can start with a software approach. Let's try and map that onto some of the priorities that I'm sure you're certainly facing, our clients that we talk to on a daily basis are certainly facing, and it's ever more so compounded, I would say, in 2020. Three areas that I'll step through, and I just want to address very quickly how the technology that we just looked at there with that snapshot can really help to actually solve some of these challenges. So I'll start with reduced costs, and then I'll move on to being event ready. And then I'll talk a little bit at the end about never really compromising on performance. Okay, so when we think about reducing costs, this has always been a challenge. It's certainly for the last decade. Customers and IT budgets, as Scott talked about, not only just reducing, but going back in the negative way and actually reducing, really needing to shrink, sorry. So furthermore compounded again by 2020's incidents, pandemics, but the revenues contracting, and real restrictions on cash flow. Now, obviously, site closures and furloughed staff, and then potentially supporting more remote workers, just basically infrastructure spending freezes. It's really difficult for our clients to actually do anything constructive right now. And we've seen a lot of breaks go on big projects, But equally, we've also worked with some clients that really wanted to accelerate what they do. They wanted to get ahead of needing to make these changes. So you may be in one of those two different places. And a lot of it will revolve around that cloud strategy again that Scott talked about. You know, what is that strategy? What's the decision that the business has made, and how, if you're an IT person, how is that really affecting you? Is it helping, or is it actually making things more difficult? So really, where we come in with our conversations around clients on cost reduction is about these elements on the left, just a handful of things that we've put onto this picture. But how can we actually help? Because obviously there is some kind of spend, there is some kind of investment that's needed still, and but it's really about working with our clients to show and prove what that spend can actually turn into. So the first thing really about repurposing infrastructure, you know, retiring when it's appropriate, but repurposing when it's not. Getting those immediate savings back. We've worked with clients with our Spectrum Virtualize technology that has stopped them spending on storage for 2 or 3 more years, where they were just constantly consuming and growing. And we've introduced the software technology that and then apply data reduction at a higher level, at a stronger level, and improves performance, and basically stops them buying for the next couple of years. So it's things like that where you come in with a software approach that we can really add value. And I won't hit everything, but again, things like being able to reuse data, where traditionally the backup has to happen. You know, it's a thing that you can't live without, but actually today's world is about reusing that data for another purpose, for development, making the company more agile and effective in terms of producing new web-based applications or retail environments. And there are so many use cases where actually just putting that backup data to use is far greater value than just having a traditional backup. And again, that's all part of the Spectrum storage suite. So software can really help bring some valuable use cases, including moving to the cloud. Again, Spectrum Virtualize allows that straightforward path to putting data in the cloud. So that software foundation, virtualize what you have, complement the environment rather than try to replace the environment. And then there's this notion of the flash core technology being able to help as well. Again, doing more with less, as I talked about, stopping clients spend, putting investment in now that stops you taking that line or that curve that you were on by introducing more efficient data reduction and greater performance. And we back all of this with this incredible capability around finance options effectively. And whether it's to buy outright, whether it's to lease, whether it's to subscribe or treat it as capacity on demand or a utility, we have that flexibility from IBM to be able to support the consumption model that you really want to achieve. So a lot of the clients today, yes, moving to OpEx, moving to a subscription type approach, and that's great. And we're doing that over and over with our clients. We have a huge help with our IBM Global Financing organization, and we're even looking at some very creative solutions for clients where it could be about buyback, it could be subscribing to the hardware and infrastructure that you already own. So I would stress that you can really push IBM for a creative approach to finance options that really you want to put in place for yourself. So I'm just going to put a couple of proof points in here from clients, and this will be the sort of pattern that we go through for the next couple of sections as well. But when it comes to cost reduction, yeah, this is just a quick snapshot with a few clients here. But just if you look at the numbers, I mean, $1.1 million saved through the improved performance. So that's taking down the actual footprint and improving the performance, saved huge amounts. So massive reduction in terms of physical space, but actually the performance element as well led to huge savings for that client at the top there. And then, 80% consolidation of environments with flash systems as well. It's phenomenal savings that we can see. The ordnance survey at the bottom, it doesn't sound like a huge amount of storage in today's time, 40 terabytes freed up, but it was day one implementation of a data management software layer on top. So Spectrum Virtualize and the Spectrum Control aspect. 40 terabytes found day one that was being wrongly consumed or wasted, and it was freed up to put to work on other projects on that first day of implementation. 40 terabytes to the Ordnance Survey was actually at the time a very, very large, substantial amount of their environment. And it's just the kind of give back that we can achieve with the software introduction. Okay, and I also will just add this additional slide here for Spectrum Virtualize running in the public cloud, because this is absolutely about cost reduction. And this slide, it's a bit busy, but it's a standalone slide effectively that we share around. And the point of it here is showing that if you go, even if you're not doing any on-premise storage, if you're just running storage in AWS, so Amazon Block Storage, with the EBS volumes, if you're just running there on the standard approach, what we're suggesting is that Spectrum Virtualize, which is deployable through Amazon's marketplace, it's incredibly easy to spin up, takes about 15 minutes to get up and running, could then sit as your data management technology for deploying storage to your EC2 instances, and actually then add savings. So by doing data reduction, we can actually tier between the different EBS files as well. We can tier between the different layers, so we can actually really start to drive cost savings by putting colder data onto different level EBS files. And if you just take this as a straightforward data reduction approach, and you were driving towards a few hundred terabytes, 640 terabytes at the end of this graph, it's a 35% cost reduction. That's $273,000 annual savings for 640 terabytes by just implementing data reduction in Amazon. So even if you are a customer who's running 100% in the cloud today, or you're trying to get to that point, this is obviously there's a quick snapshot of the power of our storage technology that can be deployed in public cloud as well. Okay, I'm going to switch to event ready. And being event ready is about protecting yourself for impacts of the current world, whether it's hacked Twitter accounts offering Bitcoin, or malicious effects on your environment just to try and take you down, or actual disasters and pandemics and that kind of thing, as we are all sadly well aware of in today's world. Having your environment being ready, event ready, is a key thing. So we're working with clients where it's about moving to the cloud. That is an event that they have to cope with, and they believe that it's going to bring additional value and help from further impacts. So that's a huge part of being event ready, is having that ability to move quickly in some instances. Supporting remote workers with a distributed way to still work on files and collaborate. The cyber res piece, absolutely, as I say, made all real by today's news around Twitter. And let's have a look at some of the ways that we help cope with some of these events. And again, it's driven by a software foundation, so about simplifying the data management and driving in data protection. That's what the Spectrum Storage Suite can do. So we can look at protecting for cyber attacks, so that's air gapping data, and again, having the full storage capabilities, we can bring in, still today, tape technology is so powerful for air gapping of data, for true effective air gapping of data, as well as the incredible snapshot capabilities built within our flash systems and our storage products. And you look at really driving then a control point, a simplified control point, so that you can work out workload should go to cloud, or react if there is an event and trigger that sort of migration to cloud, or flip to DR in the cloud. Again, all driven by having the data perfectly in sync between the environments, a true hybrid cloud. So software has a real huge part to play in being event ready. The infrastructure also plays a big part with FlashCore and FlashWatch. So we have this idea that if you implement the technology in the right way, you can absolutely make the environment bulletproof. So this comes from FlashCore being incredible levels of actual health management of flash cells that you won't see going on because it's behind the scenes. There are videos that you can watch with our chief architect who takes you through just what we do around managing flash cells. It's an incredible level of depth that when you're running a flash system, you don't see it in operation at the front end. But the benefit of having such health management of flash cells is that you have less risk. You have less need to change those drives out, or look to move data around or react to an incident because the technology has worn out. And we back the capabilities with a program that we call FlashWatch. FlashWatch means that you can have up to 7 years of enterprise class support on the implemented flash system, or you can look to do what we call flash momentum. You can look to swap those units, the entire flash system unit out non-disruptively every 3 years and have refreshed technology and drives. If NVMe was a huge shift, SCM is the next technology, storage class memory. It's already out and available, and we make it easy just to, if you want to go onto that rolling program of refresh and renewal, it's not a problem. It's possible to do that and get the latest technology on and that new car smell every 3 years in terms of storage. And then again, it's actually just one more thing, just to make it bulletproof. We also, within FlashWatch, we have highly available guarantees. What that means is we take our technology, you implement it with best practice, use our lab services to help you implement that through best practice in a dual site environment, and we will guarantee 100% availability of that platform. That's a contract that IBM puts on the table with our clients. So absolutely make it bulletproof with the hardware and with FlashWatch. And finally, just not falling short of capacity. If you've got the events going on where you need to drive up the data consumption or data usage, data storage, to react to something, then you don't want to have to fall. You don't want to be in that position where you fall short and need to purchase and implement new storage technology. Again, every time you implement more storage, you're creating more risk points, etc. So it's about having capacity on demand in certain environments, which is so powerful when you want to consume and spike effectively. So let's move on to a couple of proof points there. So again, just in terms of performance increase of backup recovery, we've helped clients go from 2 hours to do a failover down to less than 30 seconds. We've helped clients have a 7-fold increase in backup frequency, which means you've got a 7-fold increase in restore points and being able to actually recover again to events. And obviously we'll share these presentation slides with you. And finally, not compromising on performance. So unlocking the potential of data, sometimes it really is just locked in place by the performance of the infrastructure. Cloud performance when you need it, we can scale those kind of environments even when it goes out to AWS, as I talked about. You can scale with performance. IBM Cloud, you can deploy Spectrum Virtualize in an incredibly performant way, so you can still drive up the performance because we've got decades of intellectual capability in that software stack that allows you to really drive a highly performant data environment. And this is really where we help, and you'll spot a theme here, I'm sure. We've got, again, software at the top of what we can do to help address some of these elements. So whether it's tiering technology, to when to tier to the cloud, but when to actually tier between different flash levels, when to tier between NVMe flash storage and SCM flash storage. FlashCore itself is the fastest flash in the market. I think it's absolutely fair to say. we're doing so well when we do POCs and performance benchmark testing. We absolutely market leading when it comes to flash performance. So would happily look to give you that kind of viewpoint, or do the proof of concepts with you, and use my team to help support that. And again, always 100% performance with the financing capability and doing some form of capacity on demand or utility approach. You actually get your capacity that you want to pay for with spare capacity there, but you get 100% performance of that environment when it's installed. And that's something that really is quite powerful. Again, some proof points: 100-fold with Coventry Building Society, new reference point for us. 100-fold consistent performance increase. Red Bull Racing, great case study available on the website around how we've increased their workflow through software and hardware technologies. So I'm going to start just trying to wrap up here, and that's really about reminding you of the three things that I've touched on throughout those different business priorities, addressing those concerns. It's about visibility and control through a software foundation. It's about unmatched performance, never compromising on that performance, and that's something that is really dear to our sort of hearts and investments when it comes to FlashCore. And then the whole adaptable acquisition, we can make it tailored to suit your requirements in terms of how to acquire. There's a slide in here on FlashWatch, gives you a bit of a summary in terms of the program and what it's about. And I've touched on most of that. It's about an availability guarantee. It's about refreshing and replacing controllers every 3 years. And there's a whole load more within that FlashWatch umbrella. So that's something that we can send through later. And I will just end out here really with some of the service offerings that are available right now. So much of this was in response to the pandemic this year. So we've been offering storage software on a longer term trial period, so that we can try and help customers utilize our storage software to drive some benefit in the environment and push out the length of time that you're allowed to use that for. So things like Spectrum Discover, that's a way to look at metadata, look at how your environment and data is being used, spot cold data, look for ways to archive or move out to cloud, or look for areas that might be sensitive data that you need to find, and that kind of thing, because it's just spread out over such a sort of a wild environment. So those are great offerings, and I'm just going to touch on the client storage assessment. This is probably the easiest way to get started with IBM helping you we can deliver a client storage assessment. It takes very minimal time from your point of view, from the client's point of view. It takes probably maybe 30 minutes, an hour of somebody's time to download this collector file, point it and collect some results, and then ship that back to us, all done remotely. And again, my team can help get that collector file in operation. Then we do the work on your environment at the back end. What we can look at is primary storage and backup offerings, again from third parties, and we can put this into a very powerful assessment and report, and this will show you, highlight some of the areas for improvement, highlight some of the ways that you could potentially think about moving forward. It's not all about just, here's some IBM boxes that you should buy and that will change your environment. It's a true business case reflective of your environment, your real environment, and what we feel that can be delivered through storage transformations. So that with that, I feel free to get in touch about client storage assessments or any of the other technology that we've talked about here. And I think we're at the end of the presentation section. So I think, Zana, I'm going to ask if there's any questions that we need to address here whilst we're still live. I think we lost Zana. You still there, Scott?
I am indeed.
Apologies,
yes.
there was a bit of a delay. Thank you, guys. Thanks for that. That was great. Yeah, we have received a couple of questions, which we'll go through some of these with yourself, Matt, and Scott as well now. If you do have any other questions that you haven't asked already, you can still submit these via the Q&A tool. So please do feel free to do that now. So I will start with a couple that we've already got. So first one, if my total storage infrastructure is under the control of IBM Spectrum Virtualize, what assurances can be delivered that talk to the robustness of the software?
Okay, yeah, that's a solid question. So we've got, there's a couple of things to mention there. We've got a huge amount of time spent with this software. So we've been developing Spectrum Virtualize for over a decade, and that's getting closer to a couple. And it's been instrumental to many of the world's largest financial organizations as the key software layer that helps them move from one storage platform to another. So it's been tried and tested at the very top and the most stressful environments. And obviously from that, we learn a lot about keeping that code strong, resilient, and solid. And then there's that guarantee aspect as well that I talked about very briefly. So being able to do a highly available guarantee of Spectrum Virtualize implementations when delivered through best practice and lab services. Hopefully that answers.
Thank you for that. Next question. You've talked a lot about features and functions. What would you say sets IBM's storage apart from other technology providers?
Yeah, okay. So that's, I think I'll go back to the virtualization piece as a number one. Being able to actually work with an existing multi-vendor environment is something that no other vendor has really been able to do. There's a lot of suggestion that it can be done, and we do take on staff here that come in from the competitors, and they say yes, we had something similar, and then they see the power, supporting over 500 other storage devices, and it is normally that quick reaction of there was nothing we could do like this. It is quite unique in the market, still to today, to be able to virtualize other storage environments. And then to second point, FlashCore. FlashCore technology is unique. It's incredible from a performance point of view and what it delivers in terms of data reduction. So I'd add those as the two quick takeaways. Thank you,
Matthew, for that. Next question. You have mentioned integration with AWS and IBM Cloud. What about Azure? Are there any plans to support it, and when would this be? Yeah, very, very common question, actually. We're getting quite a lot at the moment, and I won't put a date on it just from a sort of a legal point of view, but you will see we are absolutely going to support as many clouds as we can. It's not about keeping that restricted, because that's the world that customers want. We tackled AWS, so IBM Cloud first. We tackled AWS next because there was some 30% market share already there, so it seemed sensible. Azure is next, and we'll hear about that later this year. We're in the second half now, so you'll hear more on Azure. There'll be a beta program out very soon, and other clouds will follow.
Hi, it's Scott here as well. So I didn't get off mute quickly enough before the third question. I just wanted to have Softcat's kind of view of the world really on the previous question about the kind of unique place in the market for IBM, if you will. So I kind of mentioned our quite unique position of having 13,000 customers. We are, in terms of market share, probably the leading partner for every major storage vendor out there. So we see it all, and really, I guess when we engage with a customer, our main job is to try and quickly establish the requirements. What are the must-haves, what are the should-haves, and what are the things we don't need to necessarily be looking at for that particular requirement, and really filtering quite quickly to get to the players that should be in the mix. Now, a lot of the features and functions that have been addressed here mean that IBM are still in the mix in almost all cases, right? So the blend of performance, capacity, price point, cloud integration, manageability are really interesting. Some of those unique engineering capabilities around FlashCore module sometimes nudge it in front and make it a unique proposition in certain client requirements. Also the kind of broad support for different protocols and use cases across the portfolio. Again, are extra points in the boxes for IBM. I think really, although Matt has really addressed it, it's the Spectrum Virtualize software and what that means, both in terms of addressing other kind of storage platforms that are already in place. Budgets can mean that you can't always get what you want and throw everything out and get everything brand new. And in terms of compromise of cost without necessarily compromising on technical debt, operational efficiency, etc. IBM is pretty much in a party of one on that respect. And also when we look at how that then extends into the cloud. So it does tie into that previous question around Azure, which is it's obviously a gap and one that they're racing to engineer in and close. But ultimately that is that IBM Spectrum Virtualize for client use cases where that kind of unilateral approach to a variety of different storage platforms really is what sets it apart.
Thank you both for that. That's about it for the questions today, so I'm just going to wrap up now. Thank you for going through all of that, and thank you to everyone for joining, for all of those who stayed right to the end. Appreciate it. We hope it gave you a little bit of extra insight there, and I'm sure you can agree our speakers have been great answering those questions as well today. As we said earlier, if you do have more questions, please do get into contact with your Softcat account manager, or if you don't have one, to contact directly, please don't hesitate to email our marketing@softcat.com email pot, and we can pass that on to the relevant person for you. As we said at the beginning, we will be sending out a copy of this webinar tomorrow, so you can watch it back on demand. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Scott and Matthew, for speaking on the webinar today. We hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.